The glass doors of Apex Capital Holdings swept open with a whisper of hydraulics. Morning light sliced through the marble atrium, catching particles of dust suspended in corporate silence. Naomi Clarke stepped inside, her ivory suit crisp against dark skin, a manila folder pressed against her ribs like a secret. Behind the reception desk sat Diamond Patterson. 26, flawless makeup, royal blue blouse tailored to intimidate. Her nails, cobalt blue acrylics, clicked against the keyboard in a rhythm that suggested ownership. She glanced up, registered Naomi's presence, and something cold flickered behind her eyes. Naomi approached. Her heels made no sound on the polished floor. She'd learned to move quietly in spaces that didn't expect her. "Good morning," Naomi said. Her voice was soft but clear. "I'm here about the receptionist position." Diamond's expression shifted. A smile appeared, sharp-edged and theatrical. She leaned back in her ergonomic chair, crossing her arms in a posture that said this should be entertaining. "Receptionist?" Diamond's voice carried. Two employees passing through the lobby glanced over. "Oh, honey, I don't think you understand what we're looking for here." Naomi placed the folder on the desk. "My resume," she said simply. Diamond didn't touch it. She looked at it the way someone might look at trash placed where trash didn't belong. The fluorescent lights hummed above them. Somewhere an elevator chimed. The moment stretched like pulled taffy, sticky and uncomfortable. "We have standards," Diamond said, each word weighted with something ugly. "This is Apex Capital, not—" She waved her hand vaguely, dismissively. "Somewhere else." Naomi's face remained perfectly still, but her pulse ticked against her wrist, a quiet drumbeat of recognition. She'd seen this before, just never quite like this. 6 hours earlier, Naomi had stood in her apartment kitchen watching dawn break over the city skyline. The space was modest, one bedroom in a neighborhood developers hadn't gentrified yet. Framed degrees lined one wall. Bachelor's in finance, MBA from a state school, certifications in investment analysis, all earned while working overnight shifts at a hotel front desk. She'd made tea the way her grandmother taught her, loose leaves steeped exactly 4 minutes. The ritual centered her before important days. And today was important, though not in the way anyone at Apex Capital expected. The manila folder sat on her kitchen counter, containing a deliberately simplified resume. High school diploma, 2 years of community college receptionist experience. All true, just incomplete. The whole truth included 12 years of strategic investing, a private portfolio worth $8 million, and a reputation in venture capital circles as the woman who never made careless bets. Naomi had built wealth the way water carves canyons, slowly, persistently, invisibly. She didn't buy designer labels or luxury cars. She bought fractional shares in startups, real estate in neighborhoods about to bloom, bonds that paid quietly while others chased trends. By 34, she'd become the kind of investor companies courted without ever meeting face to face. 3 months ago, Apex Capital's CEO had reached out through intermediaries. They needed an investor, someone willing to inject $4 million for a 40% stake. The terms were favorable. The company was solid, but Naomi had learned something crucial. Numbers tell you what a company does, but culture tells you what it is, so she'd done research. Not just financial statements, but Glassdoor reviews, exit interviews, patterns in hiring. What she found was troubling. Subtle discrimination complaints, whispers of bias, a culture that rewarded performance over people. She needed to see it herself. The receptionist job posting had appeared 2 weeks ago. Naomi applied under her real name, with a real resume, just stripped of everything that would signal power. It was a test. She wanted to walk through those doors as someone seeking employment, someone vulnerable, someone without armor. She wanted to see how they treated people who needed something from them. Now she knew. Diamond picked up the manila folder with 2 fingers, as if it might contaminate her. She flipped it open, scanned the first page, and her lips curved into something between a smirk and a sneer. "Community college," Diamond said loudly. A white man in a charcoal suit paused near the elevator, pretending not to listen. "And you think that qualifies you for Apex Capital?" Naomi kept her hands relaxed at her sides. "I have 5 years of front desk experience. The posting requested—" "The posting," Diamond interrupted, "doesn't tell you everything. There's what's written, and then there's what's understood." She leaned forward, voice dropping to a stage whisper meant to carry. "This is an elite environment. We serve billionaires, hedge fund managers, people who expect a certain presentation." The word presentation hung in the air like smoke. Naomi understood perfectly. She was being told she didn't look the part, didn't sound the part, didn't belong in a space where wealth and whiteness were assumed synonymous. The cruelty was in the subtext, deniable if questioned, but unmistakable if experienced. "I understand," Naomi said quietly. "Perhaps I could speak with the hiring manager?" Diamond laughed, a bright, performative sound. "Oh, sweetie, I am the first line. If you can't get past me—" She slid the resume back across the desk with one acrylic nail. "Maybe try somewhere more appropriate. There's a temp agency 3 blocks down. They might have something." A young black woman carrying a courier package entered the lobby. She witnessed the exchange, her eyes widening briefly before she looked away, hurrying toward the elevators. The message was clear: don't make trouble. Don't draw attention. Naomi picked up her resume. The paper felt heavier now, weighted with humiliation meant to teach her a lesson about knowing her place. "Thank you for your time," Naomi said. Her voice betrayed nothing. No anger, no hurt, no indication that Diamond's words had landed. But they had. They absolutely had. Diamond returned to her computer screen, dismissing Naomi with practiced efficiency. "Have a good day," she said, the pleasantry hollow as a drum. Naomi turned toward the elevator bank, not to leave, but to wait. She checked her watch, 9:42. In 18 minutes, everything would change. She decided not to reveal herself yet. She wanted Diamond to learn this lesson the way Diamond had taught hers, publicly, unmistakably, without the mercy of a quiet aside. Naomi stood near the elevator bay, hidden partially by a marble column. Her reflection stared back from polished brass doors. Ivory suit, natural hair pulled into a low bun, minimal jewelry. She looked professional, composed, unremarkable. Exactly as she'd intended. But inside, her grandmother's voice echoed, "Sometimes the gatekeeper looks like you but doesn't see you, baby." That's the saddest kind of blindness. Naomi had expected bias today. She'd prepared for condescension from white executives, for the subtle racism that thrived in corporate spaces. But Diamond's cruelty landed differently. It carried the weight of betrayal, of internalized oppression weaponized against its own. Diamond had learned the rules of survival in white spaces. Assimilate. Distance yourself from anything that looks like struggle. Guard the door so fiercely that the people who hired you forget you're also on the outside. It was a performance of proximity to power, exhausting and corrosive. Naomi had seen it before. The executive assistant, who was harder on black interns than white ones. The manager who criticized natural hair while relaxing her own. Survival instincts twisted into complicity. She felt something between rage and sorrow. Rage at the system that created diamonds, people so desperate to belong, they became enforcers of their own exclusion. Sorrow because she understood the desperation, even as she refused to replicate it. Her phone buzzed. A text from Richard Brennan, CEO. "We're ready when you are, Ms. Clarke. Everyone's eager to meet our lead investor." Naomi typed back, "Be down in 15 minutes. Wanted to observe the lobby culture first." She hit send, then added, "Very illuminating." 3 dots appeared, then vanished. Richard didn't ask for clarification. Perhaps he suspected. Perhaps he didn't want to know. Naomi watched Diamond through the column's edge. The receptionist was laughing now with a white colleague, their conversation easy and warm. The performance was flawless. Almost convincing. 15 more minutes. Then the mask would crack. Naomi's mother used to bring her to buildings like this one, not as visitors, but as ghosts who cleaned them after everyone else went home. Sylvia Clarke worked for a commercial cleaning company, overnight shifts, 6 days a week. She'd collect young Naomi from their neighbor's apartment at 11 p.m., and they'd ride the bus to downtown office towers. Naomi would do homework in empty lobbies, while her mother vacuumed executive suites. She'd sit in leather chairs never meant for her, behind desks that cost more than their monthly rent, surrounded by the artifacts of wealth, crystal awards, framed stock certificates, photographs of white men shaking hands with other white men. Her mother would finish around 6 a.m. They'd take the bus home. Naomi would sleep 2 hours, then go to school. "You see these spaces," her mother said once, pushing a cleaning cart past a corner office. "You're gonna own one someday. Not clean it. Own it." Naomi was 12 then. She believed her mother the way children believe in gravity, completely without question. By 16, she was working alongside Sylvia on weekends, saving every dollar. By 18, she had a partial scholarship to State University and 3 jobs: library assistant, weekend hotel clerk, campus tour guide. She slept 4 hours a night and graduated with honors and no debt. The MBA came next, paid for by working full-time at a bank while studying evenings. She learned to read financial statements the way priests read scripture, finding truth between the lines. By 25, she had her first serious money, $30,000 saved, ready to invest. She bought distressed properties in a neighborhood urban planners whispered about. 5 years later, that neighborhood became the city's hottest district. Her initial $30,000 became $400,000. She reinvested, diversified, stayed patient while others panicked during downturns. She learned invisibility was power. Every board meeting she attended, men assumed she was someone's assistant. Every negotiation, they underestimated her. She let them. She smiled, took notes, and structured deals that paid her handsomely for their condescension. By 30, she'd made her first million. By 33, she'd multiplied it 8 times. When Apex Capital's representatives contacted her 3 months ago, they'd never asked what she looked like. They'd seen returns, references, reputation. The negotiations happened through lawyers and emails. They offered her 40% for $4 million, a stake large enough to influence direction, not large enough to threaten control. She'd agreed, conditionally. She wanted to see the culture first, not from a boardroom but from the ground. Now she knew what she needed to know. The investment would proceed. But changes were coming. Naomi moved closer to the reception desk, staying behind a cluster of artificial trees that cost more than her monthly rent. From this angle, she could observe Diamond without being seen. An older black woman entered through the service entrance, wearing a janitorial uniform. She pushed a cart loaded with cleaning supplies, head down, movements efficient. She approached the reception desk tentatively. "Excuse me," the woman said softly. "I need to access the 3rd-floor supply closet. The lock's broken." Diamond barely looked up. "Maintenance request goes through the portal." "Not my problem. I submitted it yesterday. Nobody responded." "Then submit it again." Diamond's voice was flat, bored. No warmth, no solidarity, no recognition that they shared anything beyond proximity. The woman nodded, said nothing more, and wheeled her cart toward the service elevator. Her shoulders carried decades of invisible labor, of being essential and erased simultaneously. Naomi watched Diamond return to her screen, already forgetting the interaction. Then a white man approached, mid-50s, expensive suit, confident stride. Diamond's transformation was immediate. Her smile became genuine, her posture open. "Good morning, Mr. Harrison. I have those reports you requested. You're a lifesaver, Diamond. Just doing my job." She handed him a folder with both hands, almost reverential. Naomi understood now. Diamond wasn't simply cruel. She was performing survival. She'd learned that proximity to whiteness offered protection, that deferring to power and distancing from struggle was rewarded with job security and praise. It was adaptation to a hostile environment, a coping mechanism calcified into cruelty. The system was designed this way, pitting marginalized people against each other, forcing them to compete for scraps of belonging. Diamond was both victim and participant, trapped in a cycle she probably didn't even recognize. Naomi felt her phone buzz again. Another text from Richard. Ready? She typed, "On my way up." As she walked toward the executive elevator, Diamond glanced over. Their eyes met for a half-second. Diamond's expression flickered. Confusion, maybe recognition that something was off about this woman in the ivory suit. But the moment passed. Diamond returned to her work. She had no idea that the woman she'd dismissed 20 minutes ago was about to own 40% of her life. The executive elevator opened onto the 10th floor. Richard Brennan stood waiting, tall and silver-haired, his smile warm and practiced. Behind him, a glass-walled boardroom held 8 executives, all seated, all watching. "Miss Clarke," Richard said, extending his hand. "It's wonderful to finally meet you in person." Naomi shook his hand firmly. "Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Brennan. Please, Richard, we're partners now." He guided her into the boardroom. Introductions followed. Chief Financial Officer, Head of Operations, VP of Development. All white, all male except for one woman who held the HR title like armor. They were polite, curious, slightly nervous. New investors held power over budgets, strategies, futures. Contracts were already prepared. Naomi read every page while they waited, patient but tense. She signed where her lawyer had marked, her signature decisive and clear. The CFO witnessed. Documents were scanned, filed, made official. "Congratulations," Richard said, raising a glass of sparkling water. "To successful partnership," they toasted. Naomi sipped, her expression neutral. She was thinking about Diamond downstairs, about the janitorial woman dismissed without thought, about all the small cruelties that thrived in spaces like this. "I'd like to make an announcement," Richard said, "company-wide, to introduce you to everyone." "I'd like that," Naomi said quietly. Richard pressed the intercom button connecting to the lobby. His voice echoed through hidden speakers. "Attention, everyone. Please gather in the main atrium. We have an important announcement. 2 minutes." Downstairs, Diamond heard the announcement and rolled her eyes. She'd heard these before. New initiatives, restructuring plans, corporate buzzwords dressed up as inspiration. She checked her makeup in a compact mirror, reapplied lip gloss. A colleague leaned over. "Wonder what it is this time." "Probably another diversity seminar," Diamond said, her tone dismissive. She didn't see the irony. Employees trickled toward the atrium. Accountants, analysts, administrative staff, maintenance workers. They formed a loose semicircle, faces neutral, waiting for whatever performance management had planned. Diamond stayed at her desk. She was technically part of it, but she preferred observing from her post, maintaining her position as gatekeeper even when the gate was temporarily open. She glanced at her phone, scrolling social media, half listening upstairs. Richard turned to Naomi. "Ready?" Naomi straightened her ivory suit jacket. "Absolutely." They walked toward the elevator. The other executives followed, forming a procession. Naomi's pulse quickened, but her expression remained calm. She'd waited for this moment not out of vindictiveness, but out of necessity. Diamond needed to learn this lesson. They all did. The executive elevator descended in silence. 10 floors passing in smooth, expensive mechanical grace. Naomi watched the numbers decrease. 7, 6, 5, each one bringing her closer to the moment everything would shift. Richard stood beside her, checking his phone, oblivious to the tension coiling in her chest. The other executives murmured quietly about quarterly projections, about the advantage of having substantial new capital. They talked about her as if she weren't there. The elevator chimed. Ground floor. The doors opened onto the atrium. 50-plus employees stood waiting, arranged in loose clusters by department. Conversations died as Richard stepped forward, Naomi slightly behind him, the other executives fanning out to frame her. Diamond was still at her desk, 20 feet away, pretending not to care while definitely watching. Her manicured nails drummed against her keyboard in a nervous rhythm she probably didn't recognize as nervous. Richard cleared his throat. The space fell completely silent except for the ambient hum of HVAC systems. "Thank you all for gathering," Richard began. His voice carried authority earned over 3 decades. "Today marks a significant milestone for Apex Capital. We've secured a major investment that will allow us to expand operations, hire new talent, and strengthen our market position." Polite applause. Employees exchanged glances, wondering how this affected them personally. "I'd like to introduce you to our lead investor," Richard continued. "Someone whose reputation in venture capital speaks for itself. Someone whose strategic vision will help guide us forward." He turned, extending his hand toward Naomi. "Everyone, please welcome Ms. Naomi Clarke, who as of today owns 40% of Apex Capital Holdings." The applause began, scattered, uncertain at first. Then someone started it earnestly and others followed. Naomi stepped forward into the center of the atrium, into the space where power became visible. Diamond's hands froze on her keyboard. Her eyes widened. Recognition crashed over her face like cold water. The woman in the ivory suit, the manila folder, the dismissive cruelty she'd performed 20 minutes ago, the woman she'd told to try somewhere more appropriate, the woman who now owned 40% of the company. Diamond's mouth opened. No sound emerged. Her cobalt blue nails pressed against the desk edge hard enough to whiten her fingertips. Naomi looked directly at her. Their eyes locked across the marble expanse. In that moment, every word Diamond had spoken, "We have standards. Not somewhere like you. Have you tried the temp agency?" echoed between them like accusations carved in stone. Other employees began to notice Diamond's reaction. Heads turned. Whispers started. Richard continued talking, discussing investment terms and strategic initiatives. But Naomi barely heard him. She was watching Diamond's face crumble, watching the careful performance dissolve into raw, terrified understanding. The receptionist who'd held the gate so fiercely had just learned she'd been guarding it against its new owner, and there was no taking back what she'd done. Diamond felt the blood drain from her face. The atrium spun slightly, marble and glass blurring at the edges. She tried to swallow, but her throat had closed, tight and airless. Around her, employees applauded. Some looked genuinely excited. Others wore the careful neutrality of people calculating how power shifts affected their survival. No one was looking at Diamond yet, but they would. They absolutely would. She wanted to disappear, to rewind 20 minutes and unmake every word she'd spoken. But time moved only forward, cruel and indifferent. Naomi stood in the center of the atrium, composed and elegant. She thanked Richard, said something about partnership and growth. Her voice was steady, professional, completely absent of the vulnerability Diamond had tried to exploit earlier. Diamond's hands trembled. She pressed them flat against the desk, trying to anchor herself. Her mind raced through the interaction, every dismissive word now glowing like evidence. "We have standards. Somewhere more appropriate. Maybe try the temp agency." She'd said those things out loud to a woman who now controlled her employment future. The colleague beside her, Marcus from accounting, leaned over. "Isn't that the woman who was here earlier? The one you were talking to?" Diamond's voice came out as a whisper. "I don't know what you mean," but Marcus's eyes widened with recognition. "Oh my God, that was her. I saw you turning her away." The words hung between them like a verdict. Diamond looked down at her keyboard, at her cobalt blue nails, at the desk she'd guarded so fiercely it had become her identity. Everything felt suddenly fragile, temporary, already lost. Naomi finished her brief remarks and stepped back. Richard continued with logistical details, team restructuring, new project timelines. She barely listened. Her attention was fixed on Diamond, on the way the woman's carefully constructed armor had shattered. Part of Naomi wanted to feel satisfaction. She'd proven her point. She'd exposed the cruelty that thrived in spaces like this, but satisfaction felt hollow, replaced by something heavier. She thought again of her grandmother's words. The saddest kind of blindness. Diamond wasn't the disease. She was a symptom. The system had taught her that cruelty toward her own people was the price of belonging, that proximity to whiteness offered protection, that guarding the gate fiercely enough might make those in power forget she was also outside it. Naomi had seen this pattern before. She'd experienced it in banking, in investment circles, in every professional space she'd occupied. People scrambling for scraps of acceptance, willing to step on others to climb one rung higher on a ladder that was never meant for them anyway. Breaking Diamond would be easy. One word to Richard, one formal complaint, and the receptionist would be gone by end of business. But what would that solve? Another person fired, another cautionary tale. The system unchanged and grinding forward. Naomi made a decision. After Richard finished speaking, after the applause died, and employees began dispersing back to their departments, Naomi approached the reception desk. Diamond saw her coming and stood abruptly, her chair rolling backward and hitting the wall. "Miss Clarke," Diamond began, her voice shaking. "I need to apologize." "I didn't." Naomi raised one hand gently. "Not here. Is there a private office we can use?" Diamond nodded, unable to speak. She gestured toward a small conference room adjacent to the lobby. They walked there in silence, Diamond's heels clicking against marble like a countdown. The door closed. Soundproof glass surrounded them. Diamond stood rigid, arms wrapped around herself protectively. Naomi sat down, gestured to the chair across from her. "Please," Diamond sat, her hands twisted in her lap, fingernails digging into palms. "Do you know why I applied for the receptionist position?" Naomi asked quietly. Diamond shook her head. "I wanted to see how this company treats people who need something from it. People without power. People who are vulnerable." Naomi leaned forward slightly. "You showed me exactly what I needed to know." Diamond's eyes filled with tears. "I'm so sorry. There's no excuse. I was wrong. Completely wrong." "You were cruel," Naomi said simply. The word landed like a stone in still water. Not just dismissive, deliberately cruel, and not to a white person, which might have gotten you fired immediately. To someone who looked like you. Diamond flinched. I know, and I hate myself for it. Why did you do it?" The question hung between them. Diamond looked down at her hands, at the expensive manicure, at the ring she'd bought herself as proof she'd made it somewhere. "I don't know," she whispered. "Yes, you do." Silence stretched. Outside the glass walls, employees moved through the lobby, unaware of the reckoning happening in the small room. Diamond's voice cracked when she finally spoke. "Because they watch me. The executives, the managers, they watch how I handle people. And if they think I'm giving special treatment to black applicants, or being too friendly with the cleaning staff, they notice, they remember." "So you perform," Naomi said. "You guard the gate even more fiercely than they would." "I just wanted to keep my job." Tears spilled over now, streaking Diamond's foundation. "I worked so hard to get here. I can't lose it. And you thought treating me that way would protect you. I thought—" Diamond struggled for words. "I thought if I showed them I had standards, if I proved I wasn't going to let just anyone in, they'd see you as one of them," Naomi finished. "They'd forget you're also outside the gate." Diamond nodded, crying openly now. "I hate that I did that. I hate that I became that person." Naomi sat back. She felt a complicated mix of emotions, anger at Diamond's choices, sorrow for the system that shaped those choices, frustration at how often she'd seen this pattern repeat. "I could have you fired," Naomi said quietly. "One conversation with Richard. You'd be gone by lunch." Diamond went completely still. "I understand, but I'm not going to do that." Diamond looked up, confused and hopeful and terrified all at once. "Because firing you solves nothing," Naomi continued. You'd be replaced by someone else who'd learn the same survival tactics, who'd replicate the same cruelty. The problem isn't you. It's the culture that taught you cruelty was safety. She leaned forward, her voice firm but not harsh. Here's what's going to happen instead. You're going to keep your job, but you're going to change how you do it. You're going to treat every person who walks through that door with basic human dignity, regardless of what they're wearing or what they're asking for. Diamond nodded frantically. Yes, absolutely, I promise. And you're going to think about why you felt you had to perform the way you did. Because until you understand that, you'll keep replicating it in smaller ways. I will. I swear I will. Naomi stood. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it because I remember what it's like to need a chance. To be judged before you speak. To have doors closed because someone decided you don't belong. She walked to the door, then paused. My mother cleaned offices like this one. Overnight shifts, 6 days a week. People like you, receptionists, security guards, office managers. They decided whether she could use the bathroom during her break, whether she could sit down for 5 minutes, whether she deserved basic human courtesy. Diamond's face crumpled with new understanding. Some of them were kind, Naomi said. Some of them were cruel. And the cruel ones? They were always the ones who looked like her, who should have understood, who chose performance over solidarity. She opened the door. Don't be that person anymore, Diamond. The cost is too high. 3 weeks later, Naomi returned to Apex Capital for her first official board meeting. She walked through the glass doors into the marble atrium, carrying a leather portfolio instead of a manila folder. Diamond looked up from the reception desk. Their eyes met. For a moment neither spoke. Then Diamond stood. Good morning, Miss Clarke. The conference room is ready for you. Can I get you anything? Coffee, tea, water? Her voice was different, still professional but softer. No performance, no armor. Just human interaction, person to person. I'm fine, thank you, Naomi said. As she walked toward the elevator, she noticed small changes. The janitorial woman from 3 weeks ago was cleaning the atrium windows. Diamond called out to her, Morning, Miss Patricia, how's your grandson doing? The woman paused, surprised. He's good. Thank you for asking. It was a small moment, barely noticeable, but Naomi noticed. She noticed the way Diamond's posture had shifted, the way she engaged with people she'd previously dismissed. Change was happening, slowly, imperfectly, but genuinely. The board meeting lasted 3 hours. Naomi presented her strategic vision, expansion plans, diversity initiatives, cultural reforms. Some executives resisted, others listened carefully. Richard supported her proposals, understanding that the investment came with expectations. We're implementing new hiring practices, Naomi explained. Blind resume reviews, diverse interview panels, training on unconscious bias, not because it's trendy, but because talent exists everywhere and we've been looking in the same narrow places. The CFO frowned. That seems excessive. Does it? Naomi kept her voice even. How many black executives are in this room? Silence. Exactly, she said. We're leaving talent on the table because our systems filter for comfort instead of competence. That changes now. The vote passed, barely, but it passed. Afterward, Naomi stood in the atrium watching employees move through the space. She thought about her mother, about overnight shifts in empty buildings, about all the invisible labor that made places like this function. Diamond approached hesitantly. Miss Clarke, I just wanted to thank you for giving me a chance I didn't deserve. You deserved a chance, Naomi corrected gently. You didn't deserve to be crushed by a system that forced you to become someone you hate. There's a difference. Diamond nodded, tears threatening again. I'm trying. Every day. To be better. That's all any of us can do. Naomi adjusted her portfolio. Keep trying, Diamond. The world needs gatekeepers who open doors, not lock them. Naomi left Apex Capital as the sun set behind city buildings, painting the sky in shades of burnt orange and gold. She walked past the glass doors that had framed her test 3 weeks ago. past the security guard who nodded respectfully, past the threshold between outside and inside. She thought about gates and gatekeepers, about how systems teach people to police each other, to perform cruelty as survival. She thought about Diamond's face crumbling with recognition, about the janitorial woman dismissed without thought, about her mother pushing a cleaning cart through marble lobbies. Change was slow. Change was incomplete, but change was possible. Sometimes justice wasn't about punishment. Sometimes it was about transformation, forcing people to see what they'd been trained not to see, to question the performances they'd learned, to choose solidarity over survival instincts weaponized into cruelty. The ivory suit she wore felt different now. Not armor against judgment, but a uniform she'd earned. She'd walked through doors that were meant to stay closed. She'd claimed space in rooms designed to exclude her. And she'd done it not with anger, but with strategy. Not with bitterness, but with purpose. Her phone buzzed. A text from Richard. Board approved your proposals. Implementation starts Monday. Naomi smiled. The real work was just beginning. She thought of her grandmother's final words before she passed. Baby, when you make it through, don't pull the ladder up behind you. And don't let anyone else pull it up either. Naomi had made it through. Now she was building better ladders, wider doors, spaces where people didn't have to perform cruelty to feel safe. The sun dipped below the skyline. Streetlights flickered on. Naomi walked toward her car, heels clicking against pavement, carrying the weight of 40% ownership and the responsibility that came with it. Behind her, through glass walls, Diamond sat at the reception desk. She was speaking kindly to a young man with a resume in hand, listening carefully, seeing him instead of dismissing him. Small changes, building slowly, like water carving canyons. Sometimes the person who needed saving wasn't the one you expected. Sometimes it was the gatekeeper who'd forgotten she was also outside the gate. And sometimes justice looked like mercy with teeth, giving someone a chance to become who they should have been all along.